To the average person, Lake Iliamna is simply Alaska's biggest and quietest lake, an apparently boundless stretch of shining water extending under white-capped peaks. On charts, it looks peaceful, isolated, and unmoved by the passage of time. But to people who live near its shores, the situation couldn't be more different. They speak in hushed tones of the fact that the lake is far from peaceful. Under its tranquil surface, the shadows writhe where people least anticipate them. Nets disappear into thin air. Boats come back with odd scars etched deep into their hulls. For years, the people who are most familiar with this location have passed on whispered caution: there is something huge out there in the water. Something fishy. They refer to it as Alaska's Jaws. But unlike a movie shark, this monster is no Hollywood creation. This one exists, at least, that's what generations of witnesses are sure of, and much larger than anyone will admit to. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. People in the area have a habit of referring to Iliamna as the lake that swallows secrets. And for good reason. It isn't merely a body of water, it is a tomb of terror, a pool of enigma, and, if repeated accounts are to be trusted, a lair of monsters. The lake itself is immense. It stretches almost 80 miles long and 25 miles wide and resembles an inland sea rather than a mere lake. For perspective, the whole city of Los Angeles could be contained in Iliamna's waters, leaving enough room to spare. But the terror is not derived from its magnitude but rather from what lies beneath. Iliamna is one of the remotest places in all of Alaska. There are no highways to its shore. No large towns edge its banks. Few will ever walk within miles of it. That isolation is some reason why something odd could live here, unnoticed, for centuries. And though the lake is deep inland, it is not isolated from the sea. The Kvichak River runs out of Iliamna right into Bristol Bay and the Bering Sea, creating a water highway that sea animals can slip in along. Once in, they might be able to acclimate to the fresh water, get lost in the dark, and stay hidden. This has already been shown possible. Seals have been seen in Iliamna, and even beluga whales, animals that should never be so far inland, have been noticed playing in its waves. If such aquatic creatures can live here, the door opens to something larger, older, and infinitely more sinister. The very nature of the lake itself offers the ideal setting for camouflage. On the surface, the lake looks serene, but beneath it lies layered like a cake. Warm water rides on top of cool, heavy water. This separation, a thermocline, amounts to nothing to the undiscerning observer, but to something attempting to remain concealed. It is the difference between life and death. Light ceases below the thermocline, the visibility plunges to zero, and sonar pulses diminish. An animal might be 30 feet beneath the hull of an angler's boat, moving unseen, and no one on top would ever suspect. Locals tend to tell that the lake gulps down everything that goes into it. Implements, nets, even entire boats are told to disappear in it. The intrigue increases with Iliamna's incredible depth. In some places, the bottom drops more than 1,000 feet, as deep as the Empire State Building is tall. Picture a creature the length of a bus emerging from that chasm, gently nudging the bottom of a wooden fishing dory. No wonder locals in the area bestowed upon Iliamna its haunting nickname, the lake that swallows secrets. Centuries of aviators soaring over the ocean have seen shadows, giant, winging figures across the waves. Figures too large to be fish, too sluggish to be whales, and far too bizarre to brush aside. What could possibly inhabit this place? What could be so massive, so otherworldly, that even grizzled natives whisper horror stories of its existence? Even before pilots started reporting shadows or cameras were developed to pursue evidence, the indigenous people of Alaska already bore warnings about the fauna of Iliamna. The Tlingit shared stories of Gunakadite, a tremendous animal claimed to emerge from the water with such power that it would tip over canoes and pull men under. These were not jokes but teaching stories. Oldsters warned that when the water grew dark or rippled in calm windless weather, it was time to depart immediately. Those who did not heed the warning did not return. Further west, the Aleut warned of Jignook, fierce predators that hunted in packs, going around boats before attacking from beneath. Fishermen were instructed never to go out alone and to keep a sharp eye for unexpected ripples on the lake surface. In their carvings and songs, the Aleut spoke of bodies long and slender, with pointed fins and muscle sufficient to break into pieces a wooden boat. These cautionary tales, passed down by generations, depicted the lake as fertile and deadly. Salmon coursed thick through its currents, but killers waited, ready to claim life as readily as the lake produced it. When Russian fur traders came in the 1700s, intent on otter pelts, they also found something unexpected. They initially brushed off the indigenous stories as superstition. But their journals soon began to recount boats blasted by some unseen power, men pulled into the icy water never to be seen again. Picture the merchant piloting his wooden vessel over the calm surface at nightfall, and then sensing the abrupt jolt of something enormous grinding underneath him. The hull capsizes, gear disperses, and men disappear. Survivors came back traumatized, no longer joking about the village myths. What is striking is how similar these ancient descriptions are to present-day reports. Both detail metallic-colored bodies that shine in sunlight, animals traveling in groups, and boat attacks where there is no room for escape. Centuries away from one another, divided by culture and language, the tales fall into place in unsettling detail. The Aboriginal warnings, it seems, could have been early documents of experiences too chilling to disregard. One of the most legendary encounters occurred in 1942. Bush pilot Babe Allsworth took off that summer across Iliamna with government wildlife agent Bill Hammersley riding alongside. As their aircraft hummed across the big water, Allsworth spotted figures below. Initially he believed they were drifting logs. But as the plane turned, the figures shifted. They were living things. Together, he and Hammersley tallied well over a dozen huge creatures sliding under them. Each was almost as long as the wingspan of the plane. Their backs glinted in the sunlight like burnished metal, flashing silver as they swam in a line, not individually like fish, but organized, planned, almost sentient. Allsworth and Hammersley couldn't remain quiet when they sailed in. Allsworth was familiar with local myths, but this was no myth. He had witnessed it himself. Government man Hammersley, a practical-minded man, corroborated the story, adding credibility to the report. Before long, the tales spread far beyond Alaska's outlying villages. Rich oilman Tom Slick, famed for sponsoring hunts for cryptids, became fascinated with Iliamna. His expeditions interviewed residents, made hunting parties, and even attempted to capture proof. One story tells of a huge steel hook as big around as a man's arm that had been warped out of shape, as though something impossibly powerful had tugged on it from underneath. The 1942 encounter turned the tide. Aboriginal stories were one thing. But now a well-known pilot and a government official were weighing in. Other pilots came forward shortly thereafter with similar accounts. It was no longer possible to ignore. By the 1970s, the mystery of the lake had attracted not only locals but official investigators. In 1977, pilot Tim Leoport and a friend observed massive shapes breaching the surface, 30 feet or more in length, rising and disappearing within seconds. In 1988, a group sighting took place when 17 individuals along the shore all observed massive animals swim and churn together in the water. These were no one-off hallucinations. They were mass events, seen by dozens, documented in detail. Newspapers added to the intrigue. In 1979, the Anchorage Daily News provided a $100,000 reward for solid evidence of the monster. The ensuing search turned out to be one of North America's biggest cryptid hunts. Submarines searched the depths. Sonar swept the inky water. Hydrophones detected eerie resonant calls that no identified fish was capable of making. Fishermen returned with shredded nets and deformed steel hooks, saying that something unimaginably powerful had ripped into their equipment. But for all the hunts, no one took clear evidence. Photos were out of focus. Sonar readings indicated but did not prove. Submarines came back from the depths with nothing, though bruised and battered. Still, the absence of concrete evidence didn't deter the mystery much. If anything, it made it even more profound. Recently, researchers have attempted to reach Iliamna with new technologies. Biologist Bruce Wright proposed the killer could be sleeper sharks, gigantic creatures with reputations for living centuries in cold water. They grow more than 20 feet long and live in darkness. The Kvichak River could also serve as an avenue for them into Iliamna. It's not unthinkable. But eyewitnesses tell of monstrosities 30, 40, even 60 feet long, shining like steel in the sun, cruising in disciplined packs, things no sleeper shark has ever done. Environmental DNA sampling has indicated the presence of fish and seals, but also unknown sequences that correspond to no known animal. Thermal imaging from planes has registered heat signals far too big to be seals or salmon, moving just under the water's surface. Seismographs have detected unusual rhythmic disturbances in the lake, as something immense appeared to be moving through the water. And still, after sonar sweeps, DNA sampling, and satellite shots, the enigma remains. Boats keep returning battered. Nets keep disappearing. In 2021, 2 divers investigating the lake's southern end went missing, their anchor lines cut clean through. Meanwhile, global warming is changing Iliamna. Melting permafrost, altered salmon migrations, and rising temperatures are pushing whatever is down deep closer to the surface. Sightings have mounted. Drones have picked up long, dark forms writhing under the surface. Satellites have detected ripples in vacant waters. Sonar teams keep taking readings of massive bodies moving and disappearing. The monsters, it appears, are breaking through more frequently, maybe driven into the open. Iliamna is not an isolated incident. Scotland's Loch Ness, Canada's Lake Okanagan and Ogopogo, and Lake Champlain and Champ have the same legends, ancient beasts stalking immense bodies of freshwater. The parallels are dramatic. Are these all echoes of an old species, frozen and evolved in glacial lakes everywhere? If so, then Iliamna would be the best case so far. Unlike many lake legends, it has credible pilots, government agents, sonar evidence, physical damage, and indigenous lore stretching back centuries. After all the tales, stories, and fruitless hunts, the verdict is chilling. Lake Iliamna is home to something big. Something that can tear nets, warp steel, and disappear at will. Something that acts with a mind, surrounding boats, hunting in packs, or attacking with awe-inspiring power. Whether it be an evolutionary anomaly, an unknown predator, or a prehistoric relic, it has evaded capture for decades of searching. And as global warming brings it near the surface, the question is no longer whether the Iliamna monster exists. The question is, what does it desire? And how long can we evade it? So I'll leave you with this: in the black waters of Lake Iliamna, what do you think lies in wait? A living fossil, a mutant predator, or something our science hasn't yet named?